My fellow Americans, we are facing a crisis. Our country is pushing a policy of intervention, of expansionism, of colonialism. They're siding with the EU in reference to the Ukraine. And the conflict that has occurred in the Ukraine is very similar to the conflicts that have occurred in Syria, Libya, and Egypt, all powered up by an Arab Spring mentality coming out of the democratically led Senate and, of course, our president, a bumbling idiot. The person who is now pushing us closer to the brink of war, who has no idea of the consequences of his cavalier, egomaniacal attitude, who's now taking us into a situation which is like dissecting the very source of conflict with conflict. I told you not to call me during the show. I'm recording this. I'm recording this and you're interrupting me. No. We get calls during the show, and we've got a live chat going on right now, tinychat.com/thirdparty, where we talk about political issues and we integrate with multiple chat rooms. If you want to see our chat show at night, 6 to 9 Pacific, simply go to coolrock.com and you'll see 4 or 5 chat rooms at once. We are integrating our chat with the world at large because we believe that this anti-war effort has to go on, and we do an anti-war show on Saturdays to just focus on the specific issues. Tonight is a show which we dedicate to the very underbelly of war. It's called Conspiracy Monday. And we talk about the things that you don't hear about in the mainstream media, and we look at the reasons why wars are starting around the world, like the one currently in Ukraine, with Russia posturing in Crimea, preparing with their 90,000 troops and 90 planes to prepare for a potential conflict with anyone who resists their overtaking patriarchal control over a country that they've had dominance over for decades. We also believe that the Ukrainian people are asking for that wonderful carrot in the sky, democracy. It'd be great if we had democracy in America, wouldn't it? It'd be wonderful. It'd be wonderful if we could be the gleaming example of democracy, but we can't even produce more than 2 parties. Now, if you believe that the two-party system is somehow written in stone or written into the Constitution, then you're wrong. You see, our country is basically very, very tame. And they're kept tame. Our two-party system controls the body politic of America. A third party is almost disenfranchised. Someone was saying earlier that Rand Paul was asked why his father, Ron Paul, didn't run as a third-party candidate, because the third parties are just marginalized in society. Basically, given no real chance of winning an election. Well, I think Ron Paul would have been a very good third-party candidate. I think that the message of the Federal Reserve being so big and printing money recklessly out of thin air is a very important message, and it resonates with the American people. So a third party would be a perfect vehicle to disarm and basically retire the Fed. So we are in favor of ending the Fed. We are also ending the power of elitists from around the world as they control our country and turn it into a police force to be used by the World Bank and the IMF to enforce their monetary control and dominance and expansionism and imperialism over other countries like the Ukraine. Now, what has happened here, realistically, is Arab Spring all over again. Until the American people start looking at the policies that are coming out of the mouths of the Democratic leadership and the Republicans, who seem to endorse this pushing democracy around the world, which, by the way, experts have said is not a winnable plan. There's no way we can do this. Military advisors have all said you cannot do this without creating and triggering war. They continue to do it. So the American people really do need a brand new direction. Now, people are saying my camera is messed up. Yes, my camera is in backup mode right now. I'm dealing with a series of crises just getting cameras to go when I'm integrating all things Xbox 360 into my game plan tonight, which is very strange. Ron Paul was a control mechanism. I agree, Buckwild. I don't believe Ron Paul was sincere about spearheading a third party, and I don't believe he even took it seriously, and I know his son didn't either. Video's okay, yeah. Well, we were integrating an Xbox 360 game into our show, and it was kind of interesting because tonight was the night that we wanted to do that. But at the same time, this story about the Ukraine and a potential trigger point for World War III has taken center stage. So we'll be doing that throughout the evening. We'll be touching down on The Walking Dead and other things. We've got Awesome Carl show providing us backgrounds. It's been very good. We're going to be talking about all the links that Awesome Carl and others are bringing into the room. We do this on a daily basis. As you can see, we've got a nice chat room going in the background. Here's some of the links that just came in. U.S. threatens Russia with isolation after the Crimea incursion. This is a serious declaration of war, an invasion, according to John Kerry. And according to John Kerry, who is very hawkish in many ways as the Secretary of State, he's a hawkish, he wants war. He says that we're ready to go to the hilt in response to Moscow's act of aggression. Now, these are fighting terms that John Kerry is using. A man who barely spent a few weeks in the war, in the Vietnam War, and got medals for it. He's out there using words like go to the hilt to defend our position against Russia. Tensions rise as Vladimir Putin mobilizes all reservists and U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry flies into Kiev. That's another link that came in. And then, of course, the Russian admiral issues ultimatum in Crimea. Okay. A Russian admiral issued an ultimatum to Ukraine's military in Crimea to surrender, as Moscow said the crisis can be diffused in the country, and agrees to take back its ousted pro-Moscow president. As long as the country agrees to take back its ousted pro-Moscow president. All right. This is a flashpoint. We've got a potential for a crisis that could evolve into a World War III scenario. Now, as you know, I'm against war. I was very, very happy to find out that Obama couldn't trigger a conflict with Syria in Damascus, that Obama was pushed back by Vladimir Putin's efforts. And I believe that we cannot solve the problems at all quickly with war. It will only create more of a crisis, and the people are going to be caught in the crossfire. You see, that's the problem with funding economic hits on countries like Ukraine and offering a carrot stick of $35 billion. The people, they seem to want it, but that wouldn't even begin to correct the problem in the Ukraine. And the EU is already suffering from a tremendous load of countries like Portugal, Spain, and Italy, and Ireland, of all places. Countries that economies are struggling, and now the EU wants to spread its wings. Well, what they're doing is they're printing money out of thin air, much like the Federal Reserve does. In fact, they're backed by the Federal Reserve. It's all tied together. And our nation's monetary system has been dominated by these global elitists that are telling our country to act like a police force around the world, and I'm sick and tired of it. We had Vietnam, we had Iraq, we had Afghanistan, we had Libya, and now we've got another potential crisis with Barack Obama grandstanding and John Kerry grandstanding and just not recognizing that Russia's resources are at stake here. You're dealing with the lifeblood of a nation that has a long-standing relationship with Ukraine. You can't just erase it with a magical world of democracy. Democracy must be earned. People need to start working to become a participant in any country in order for democracy to happen. Our country's struggling right now. We're struggling to have a third party. So our democracy isn't exactly forming in this country either. So I recommend all of you realize that your leadership in this country is just hooked up to the wrong umbilical cord. And we need a third party more than ever before to disengage from global domination of the IMF and the World Bank over other countries. We cannot be used as a pawn in their international game of hijacking central banks and dominating the policies of other nations.